rise. May be seated. You may be seated. Welcome back.
All right, welcome back from lunch. The state is present, the defense is present, and the defendant is present and dressed out. We're here in the state of Florida versus Curtis Reeves. State, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
Defense, you ready to proceed?
We are, Your Honor.
All right, call your next witness, please. Defense.
The defense would call Margaret Scalise.
Margaret Scalise. How would I spell that last name, please?
S-C-A-L-I-S-E.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Come on up and have a seat, please. You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mrs. Scalise. Would you please, for the record, state your full name?
Margaret Scalise.
Mrs. Scalise, would you give the court a little bit of history concerning your employment history, your past employment history?
I started working at Busch Gardens in 1977 and worked in various parts of the park, and then ended up in the office where in 1993 I met Curtis, and then I went into the benefits office and worked there till 2009.
I'm going to slow you down a little bit. I want you to sit back and relax. Let's talk a little bit about your time that you moved into the office. What do you mean by into the office of Busch Entertainment?
I was originally hired and worked on the monorail, and I did that for a year. And then I worked out in the park, and I served beer at the hospitality house for a year. And then I applied for a secretarial position in 1980.
Okay, and you were hired, or rehired, or promoted, I should say, right?
Right.
To a secretarial position at Busch. And secretaries for whom?
I worked for the general services manager for 11 years and the operations manager for 6 years, and then I became the benefits coordinator for the last 10 years.
Okay, and are you still working for Busch?
No, I retired in 2008.
Okay. Do you know Curtis Reeves?
Yes, I do.
And how was it that you were able to come to know Curtis Reeves?
Well, actually, my husband worked for Busch Gardens also in the security department. And when Curtis was hired, my husband was working with Curtis at that time, or for Curtis. And I met him through that association where they worked together.
When you first met Curtis, what was your husband's position there at Busch?
He was a security manager.
Okay, what is a security manager?
He's in charge of the area managers throughout the park and Adventure Island, and they all report to him, and then he reported to Curtis.
Okay. Busch Gardens and Adventure Island, that is two locations that are visited by many individuals, is that correct?
Yes.
Approximately how many individuals would you say on a daily basis attend those two parks?
During the busy season, it could be up to 25 to 30,000 people. On an average day, probably 15 to 20,000 people.
Okay, and so security is quite important for Busch Entertainment?
Yes.
And hiring the right personnel is quite important as well?
Yes.
And your husband had a managerial position in that department?
Yes.
And so he had many individuals that he supervised under him, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, do you know if he had applied for the position of Director of Security for Busch Gardens?
When the previous manager left, my husband also applied for that promotion position, as well as Curtis.
Before Curtis was hired, was your husband the acting director for a period of time?
Yes.
How long was your husband the acting director of security?
Approximately 6 months, maybe.
Okay. And so your husband was competing with Mr. Reeves for that same position?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves gets hired?
Yes.
And is that how you met him?
Yes.
Tell the court a little bit how your relationship with Mr. Reeves developed over the years.
As the security manager and the vice president of security, they would go on conferences throughout the United States at different theme parks. And it happened once a year. They'd attend these theme parks meetings. And the wives got to come along as kind of a vacation situation. So the men would be in their conferences and meetings for 3 or 4 days, and the women would get to basically have a vacation and tour around. And then when we went to these conventions, Curtis and his wife and my husband and I would tack on 3 or 4 days at the end of the conference, and we would tour around and vacation in the various areas in the United States.
We're talking about 2003
Approximately,
on, is that correct?
yes.
Okay. And so when Mr. Reeves was hired as a director of security for Bush, your husband stayed in his position as manager of security, is that correct?
Right.
That was a position directly under Mr.
Right.
Reeves?
Yes.
Okay. And these trips that you all would have once a year were to various parts of the country?
Yes.
And so you got to know Mr. Reeves on a not only
personal
professional,
level.
but now a personal level.
Right.
Level. Is that correct?
We probably took 8 to 10 of these vacations over the years. And yes, we got to be very good friends.
Ate breakfast with him?
Yes.
Lunch with him?
Yes.
Dinner with him?
Yes.
Went shopping with him?
Yes.
Tell the court your feelings of Mr. Reeves back in those days when Mr. Reeves was the director of security and you all would go on these vacations and seminars.
We always had, I always knew I would have a wonderful time because Curtis was a very thorough person in looking into the areas that we were going to visit and finding the points of interest that we would enjoy. And we toured around and did historical things and fun things. And he was very conscious of taking us to places and bringing us back safely. I always felt very safe because he knew where he was going and he knew how to get back home safely.
So now in these trips, you've gotten to experience Curtis on a personal level as well as you experienced Curtis on a professional level while he was working there at Bush.
Yes.
Tell the court what you experienced as far as Mr. Reeves' temperament, first on a professional level.
To be manager of the security of Busch Gardens, it takes a lot of responsibility because there's always a potential for things to happen or something to go wrong. So you have to always be, I think he always used the word proactive on how to make sure everything was going to, be safe and secure. I thought according to my husband, he introduced quite a few different programs into Busch Gardens to ensure that the safety of the employees as well as the guests would be, maintained.
I'm more concerned with your interaction with him on a professional level.
Well, I didn't have to, as far as professionally, we didn't interact too much. He had his own secretary, but I did maybe set up some meetings and do occasionally typing for him on that level.
Did you ever see there at Busch Gardens Mr. Reeves losing his temper?
Never. Never.
What type of demeanor did he carry there at Busch Gardens?
He appeared very confident in different situations that might arise, and very thorough, and I never saw him upset. I've never heard him say a curse word.
Well, let's talk about from a personal level on these trips that you would take, both for the seminars and on these little outings that you had thereafter. What was his temperament around you on a day-to-day basis and your husband?
He's got a very, very good sense of humor. We always had a fun time, a good time. like I said, he would make sure that wherever we went was always going to be, a good experience for us. And he never got angry. Even if we got lost, it was an adventure, driving through the countryside.
Now, he worked for Bush Entertainment for a period of time, and then he retired. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you all maintain, outside of these functions for seminars for Bush Entertainment, did you all maintain any sort of friendship? Did you all develop a friendship where, separate and apart from these trips, you all would meet, to go to dinner,
Yes.
hang out?
Yes, we did. We went out to dinner on many occasions. We would, actually, in the last couple of years, we developed kind of a routine of meeting for lunch and visiting.
I'm going to take you there, but I want, during the time of employment, did you all maintain some type of friendship as well?
Yes, yes.
Okay, and you all would go out to
dinner
together, socialize together. Tell the
Yes.
court what you experienced of Mr. Reeves during that contact.
We always would go out to dinner and just have a fun discussion of current events or whatever. It was always lighthearted and.
Did you ever experience Mr. Reeves ever getting agitated or lose his temper or become violent in any way?
Never, never, never.
Was
Never.
that his temperament at all?
I never even heard him raise his voice. He would probably get quieter rather than, saying something.
Now, retirement takes place for Mr. Reeves.
Yes.
When did you retire?
And on 08,
In 08. Do you know when Mr. Reeves retired?
I think 03, something like that. Several
Okay.
years earlier.
Several years earlier than your retirement?
Yes.
Okay. And so now you retire. Do you have any further contact with Mr. Reeves after retirement?
Yes.
Okay, tell me about that.
We continued to go out to dinner, exchange, emails, jokes on the computer, and we would have a routine of going to the movies, going to lunch, going to the movies, and then going to get ice cream.
Okay. So you've been to the movies with Mr. Reeves and his
Yes.
wife Vivian?
Yes.
The four of you?
Yes.
You, your husband, Vivian, and Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Tell the court approximately how many times you've had the occasion to go with Mr. Reeves, your husband, and Vivian to the movies.
Over the last 10 years, probably 20-plus times.
And do you know what movie theater you all frequented?
We went to the Cobb Theater in Land O'Lakes.
And you've sat in those theaters and watched a movie with
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
On any occasion of those 25 to 30 times that you've experienced that with Mr. Reeves and his wife, have you ever seen him get upset over someone texting in the movie?
That situation never occurred. No, he never did.
Did you ever see him get upset with anybody in any of those movie theaters over anything?
No, we always had a great time. It's always lighthearted and fun.
You all
Never-
had a routine
Yes.
during these later years, correct?
Yes, in the last 5 years.
Tell the court what that routine was.
We would meet for lunch at Sonny's Restaurant in Wesley Chapel, because it's halfway between our homes, and have a lunch, and then go to the early matinee movie, and then we would go to Dairy Queen afterwards, and probably sit there for another hour and a half chatting and visiting.
That was a pretty common routine
Yes.
for you all.
Yes.
Do you consider Mr. Reeves a close friend?
Yes.
You consider his wife a close friend?
Yes.
Now, knowing Mr. Reeves as you know him, do you have any concerns whatsoever that if this court were to set a reasonable condition of pretrial release in this case, that this gentleman here, Mr. Reeves, would be a danger to the community?
No.
Object. I think that ultimate decision should be left up to the court.
I understand, it's advisory, there's no jury here. You may continue, Mr. Escobar.
Thank you. Ms. Scalise?
No concerns whatsoever.
Okay. Would you have any concerns whatsoever if the court were to set reasonable conditions of pretrial release that Mr. Reeves would flee and not answer to this court if he was released on some form of pretrial release?
No, he's a very honest, honorable man. He would never do anything like that.
No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Escobar. Appreciate you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court, Mr. Escobar, Mr. Michaels. Mrs. Scalise, good afternoon, ma'am. You indicated that you never saw Mr. Reeves get angry while he was employed with Bush Entertainment?
No, I personally did not.
And you were a secretary to someone else?
Correct.
And where was your office?
I was in the Human Resources building at the last 10 years of my employment.
Okay, and who was your supervisor? Who were you a secretary for?
Well, I was the benefits coordinator, and Gary Vian was the vice president of Human Resources, my superior.
And you indicated there was another lady that was actually Mr. Reeves' secretary, correct?
At that time, yes.
And what was her name?
Margaret Wilson,
And where was her office located?
right outside of his office in the security building.
Okay, and where's the security building in relation to the building that you were working at?
My building is located outside, on the perimeter of Busch Gardens on Bougainvillea Avenue, and the security office is located practically in the center near the admissions
Okay.
of Busch Gardens.
All right. So, Ms. Scalise, you would agree with me, had Mr. Reeves gotten angry in the building where he was employed or where he was working, you would not have had an opportunity to see that, would you?
No,
In fact, you were in a different building.
correct.
So you can't honestly sit here and say that he never got mad while employed at Busch Gardens, can you?
True, but we had interactions.
I understand that, but again, my question is, you cannot honestly sit there and say that he never got angry while employed at Busch.
No, I never saw it.
My question is, though, you cannot say he never got angry, correct?
I can't say that.
Up until the time of this incident, had you kept a relationship with Mr. Reeves?
Yes,
Were you still going out and having dinners and so on and so forth?
yes,
Now, Mr. Escobar asked you the fact that you've been to Cobb Movie Theater at least 20 times,
approximately, yes.
and you've never seen him get upset in the movie theater over texting or anything like that?
No, I never
correct?
saw that.
You would agree with me, would you not, that on January 13th of 2014, you were not at Cobb Movie Theater?
No, I was not.
Right? Is it fair to say that you have no idea what transpired between Mr. Reeves and Mr. Olson that day?
I do not know anything about that situation.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Mr. Escobar, do you have any questions?
Just a couple, Your Honor.
Feel compelled to ask?
Ms. Scalise, when was the last time that yourself, your husband, Mr. Reeves, and his wife went to the Cobb Theater?
It was right around Thanksgiving time.
No further questions.
Well, thank you for coming in today, Ms. Scalise. Your excuse is with us. All right. Mr. Escobar, who do you wish to call as your next witness?
We would call Michael Scalise.
Michael, please. Michael Scalise, you wrote a letter at the number 20 in the exhibit book, is that correct?
I believe it's number 20, Your Honor, yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Scalise. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Please come up and take a seat. You may inquire.
Please state your full name for the record.
Michael Joseph Scalise, Sr.
Mr. Scalise, if you could please give the court a little bit of history concerning your employment at Busch Entertainment.
Yes, I started at Busch Gardens in 1970 and started in the parking lot and did various jobs, monorail driver, train. Started in security in 1984 as the area manager there, and was there until 2005 when I retired after 35 years at Busch Gardens.
So, Lisa, say you worked your way up the chain, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you, in 1984, is this correct, you went into management?
Yes, I was, what they do there is they move you in. I was in management prior to that, but I had an area, monorail train, skyride, grounds, and the night cleaning crew. That's what I was in charge of. And then they move people around periodically, and then I moved into security at that point in 1984 as the same grade level and manager that I was before.
Now, there was a director of security at that time that was not Mr. Reeves, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and you worked under that director of security?
Yes, I did.
How long did you work under that director of security?
He left in 1992. And then in 92, it took a year for them to get a replacement. And there were quite a few applicants that came in, and I had heard that there was some very qualified law enforcement individuals who were going to apply for the job, which in the past that really hadn't been the case. The security was a whole different realm at that time versus law enforcement, quite a big difference. And I applied for that position, and I found out a few weeks later that Curtis Reeves was named the director of security there.
So you, after all those years at Bush, you yourself had applied for the position of director of security, and you did not get that position.
That's correct. You think 21 years of service for the company is really all you need at that time, is what I thought. Afterwards, I realized it took a lot more than the experience that I had. Just by all the changes and the way society had changed, and there was more need for security to be a big security portion. There was a lot of safety situations with guests when you're dealing with 4 million people a year, and our staff went from 82 to 105 employees, and we started doing a lot more training, a lot of seminars that we were really unable to do prior to Curtis starting with the company.
Well, let's talk a little bit about how Curtis came in and how Curtis changed security for Bush Entertainment. Please tell the court what he did in order to make Bush Entertainment a safe place in today's world.
Well, when he first came in, I thought that we were just going to turn into a law enforcement department at that point, and I think a lot of the security officers at that time did too. We always thought that we were doing a pretty good job. And when Curtis came in, we had a 900-square-foot security office at the turnstiles of the front entrance of the park, and a radio system that was already 15 years old. And he didn't come in there, like a bull in the china shop. It surprised me a little bit, and we talked about that. And he just asked, he said, what are the things you've been trying to do for the last 10 years while you've been here that you were unable to get? I mean, when he came on, I said, would you like to see our mobile unit? And it was we used to own a barbecue place across the street on Bush Boulevard, and we inherited their Chevette with a pig on the roof. And that was our security mobile unit at the time, and I couldn't even get him in it, And we had a big laugh about that. But afterwards, he did a tremendous job in just training seminars and giving our employees the benefit of learning from professionals in the business. Firearms training, handcuff training. We dealt with a lot of counterfeit money we didn't know anything about. There was just weapons training, and we had the bomb squads out on numerous occasions teaching our people what to look for. And just being able to deal with guests a little better than we used to, because we just never really knew how to do it.
Who wrote all the policies and procedures for security for Bush Entertainment after Mr. Reeves was hired?
He did. He wrote with the help of, we had 2 assistant area managers and myself, and he had a great rapport with the other parks as well, the directors from San Diego and Houston and Williamsburg, and by talking to them and just getting together, which he started really, we'd meet 2 or 3 times a year at different locations, and we would, we would talk about these things, policies and situations, and we started rewriting policies, which they headed, Curtis headed that group.
So he headed the group not only for Bush Entertainment here in Tampa, but Bush Entertainment throughout the country.
They felt like it was time for them to get everybody working on the same page, and I think it was the right thing to do.
So would you say to this court today that security at Bush Entertainment as a result of Mr. Reeves improved dramatically?
Yeah. He did a lot of things more than just getting our people trained. I mean, he put us in a facility that was just state-of-the-art, and we had generators that would cover us no matter what conditions that were outside. We'd have radio service. We would still have our monitoring system for our cameras and things of that nature, which, were very important. And it was a big benefit to that organization as far as I'm concerned.
Now, coming in new, being from law enforcement, coming into Bush Entertainment, how did Mr. Reeves get along with security that was already there?
Well, when you start making your people feel important, I think it was a big benefit. They saw a lot of improvements in their department. He initiated the uniform cleaning, which seemed like a little trivial thing, but to the employees it was a huge thing that they got free laundering of their uniforms. It just made them feel better for themselves, and it made the public look at them a little different. And the other thing, I think the biggest thing is that the employees, the 3,600 employees we had on our location, didn't really respect what security was and what they were doing. And I think that changed over a couple of years. And it wasn't something that you could just do overnight. You had to work at it. And, we appreciated it. And I know they did, too.
You worked hand in hand with Mr. Reeves over all the years of his employment there at Bush Security. Tell the court your opinion of his demeanor and how he carried out himself with every employee of Bush Entertainment.
Well, one of the things that he did that I kind of tried to steer him away from it, but it's an open door policy that employees could walk in any time if they had any kind of problems, whether it be personal or business. And he would open his door for that, and want to talk to them and learn a little more about their personal lives as well as what's going on at Bush. Because he surely wasn't going to take what I was saying. I'd been there 21 years. He wanted to hear it from the employees, and I think they really appreciated that. It meant something to them that he cared, not only what they were doing at work, but in their home life as well. And he was always that way. His door was never really shut.
Did you ever find Mr. Reeves to be aggressive or agitated at work, or rude or violent in any way in carrying out, his duties?
No, not at all. Matter of fact, I'm probably more apt to get loud or when I get nervous or I'm agitated about something or I feel like there's something I want to say or get across than he is. And of course, I've traveled with him all over the United States, going to different associations and organizations that we belong to in the security field, and I had never seen him lose his temper or raise his voice. And to me, I always thought that was interesting because, he was in a position at the police department to, if he wanted to get loud or to throw orders out or be demanding, which it didn't never seem to me that he ever did. And it did surprise me quite a bit. And I think it surprised a lot of people that he got to know, that he would be more quiet and, he would just be so calm when he talked to you. It was a calming effect.
Now, while working at Bush Entertainment, both you and he attended numerous seminars. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And there's some organizations that you became a member of and he became a member of. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And there's some special designations that he was able to achieve.
That's correct.
Tell the court about those associations and those special designations.
One of the things when when I was at Bush that we never really had an opportunity to do was to go out in the community and reach out to neighborhoods and people having problems due to our business. I mean, we brought in a lot of people every year, a lot of congestion and traffic and noise and just a lot of things that they probably wouldn't have been used to it otherwise. And they had concerns, and they had no way to really go out and express that. So we were sitting around one day, and Curtis said something about the neighborhood watch, and he said, "Have you guys ever been involved in it?" And I said, "No, I wasn't even sure they even had one at the time." And he said, "Oh, yeah, they do." And so we reached out, and we had our meetings out there on 30th Street. And we started getting more people in from the neighborhoods and bringing up suggestions and things that we could work with them with. And we had a great time. You know, we would talk to them and be able to personable and even bring them in at certain times and have coffee and donuts at the park and just show them what our business was about. And and we gave them cell phone numbers, and if they had problems in their neighborhoods, they could call us. You know, we had mobile units that were already doing the perimeter of our parks anyway, so it worked out very well for us. And that was one thing he did. And also we had, he was the chairman of the West Coast chapter of American Society of Industrial Security, which met.
What does that mean?
Well, they're a security group of professionals. We had the Hillsborough County security directors, and we had all the associated security companies, Wackenhut and some of the others that were around, and businesses that USF and things like that. They would all come and we'd meet, and Curtis became the president of that association. And he also, we actually worked together and trained for the certified personal protection designation, which is the CPP. And at that time, for the American Society of Industrial Security, I believe there were like 6,000 in the United States. So it was a pretty nice designation. And
now, that designation wasn't just given to you. You had to actually train for and be tested.
That's correct.
It was an extremely difficult designation to get.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And Curtis became one of, you said, 6,000 individuals in the United States that had that special designation.
That's correct.
Now, I know you mentioned that as part of your occupation there at Bush Entertainment, that you and Curtis would go to seminars around the country.
That's correct.
In order to enhance your abilities in security. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you took your wives as well?
Yes, we did.
Okay. Did you all have an opportunity to engage in a personal relationship?
Yes.
During those particular trips? Not
Yes.
just business, but personal?
Yes.
Tell the court about that.
Well, the trips that we took were for another association. It was for the security and safety of theme parks, amusement parks in the United States. So we went to San Diego, California. We'd go to Texas. We'd go to Virginia. We'd go to Chicago. We traveled around numerous times, and probably 12 or 15 different locations that we traveled. And when our wives could take off, they would go and they would be set up, and mainly him and I would be in there working behind closed doors, and they would be out shopping or enjoying themselves at these locations. So my wife and his wife got to be very close friends, and on the other hand, Curtis and I became very close friends.
How did you become very close friends?
Well, we had a lot of interest, for one thing, and I had a lot of respect for just his demeanor and the way he treated people, and it came from a working relationship and just basically became a friendship. And he invited us over to his house for dinner, and we'd do the same for him. And we probably went to the movies, I'm guessing, 25, 30 times in the last 10, 12 years. And we'd go, we always had a routine. We'd go to Sonny's. After Sonny's, we'd go to the Cobb. And then after the Cobb, we'd go to Dairy Queen and have ice cream. And we'd talk about our families. And we had a good relationship. We went to their house in North Carolina, and we traveled with him on other vacations that weren't associated with business. We went to Hawaii, we went to Maine, and we've done some things that were just a lot of fun.
So you've had an opportunity to see what it's like day in the life of Curtis Reeves' normal activities, correct?
Correct.
You've had numerous opportunities of that, correct?
Correct.
Tell me what kind of family man he is, what kind of husband he is, what kind of human being he is when he's not in his professional working environment.
Very, him and his family are very much into church. They've always talked about that, how close that is, and made their family closer. Their daughter and their son, I've known them for many, many years. He used to live in Lutz, and maybe 2 or 3 miles from our house. And, Curtis has always been well respected, and my kids always enjoyed being around him. He had a sense of humor which a lot of people don't see, which you wouldn't see unless you were close to him. I don't know. He loves his mother and his kids and his grandchild, and it's just been a real close relationship. He's been to my mother's house, and he makes himself available for you to talk to and just be a friend.
How does he interact on a personal level with the community? Not on a professional level, but I'm talking about how does he go about dealing with the general populace of the community as a human being?
I would say for a big man, he's very low-key and a quiet individual. Like I said, he's got a good personality, and a lot of people don't see that. And I think in every situation when a person you would think would be, you kind of stand back a little bit waiting for something to happen, and it never does. That shows a lot to me of an individual and how he treats, and he wants to be treated himself, how he treats other people.
Mr. Scalise, based upon your interaction, your knowing Mr. Reeves, is there anything that you feel, if this court were to, at some point in time, enter an order allowing Mr. Reeves to be released on some form of pretrial release, is there anything in your body of knowledge of this gentleman here that would indicate to you that he is a danger to this community in Pasco, or frankly, any community in this country?
I would say no, not at all.
Is there anything that would lead you to believe if the court issued an order of pretrial release that this individual, Mr. Reeves, would be a risk of flight in any way, shape, or form?
No, not at all.
Is he an honorable man?
Honorable, very honorable.
No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Escobar. Mr. Rashid, do you wish to inquire?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court? Mr. Escobar, Mr. Michaels. Mr. Scalise, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
You indicated that Mr. Reeves trained the security officers at Bush Entertainment on firearm training and weapons training?
Well, I'd like to clear it. He brought in the professionals from the local law enforcement to go over the safety techniques, and then they started at the range training there, and it just escalated from there to where we had the ranges training the officers.
Now, the security officers at Bush Entertainment, did you all carry firearms?
For the weapons carrying, the officers doing the cash runs at night carried weapons.
Okay.
There were about 20, I think, altogether.
Only for cash runs, though, not for security purposes at the park?
No, that's correct.
Did Mr. Reeves ever get involved in the firearms? I thought you indicated that he never lost his temper while employed at the Tampa Police Department.
No, I did not say that.
What did you say in reference to the police department? You had indicated he worked at TPD, and do you recall testifying to that?
Judge, I'm not sure what the prosecutor's getting. He never testified to that.
I don't have it in my notes, Mr. Christie. It's possible, but I don't remember it. Why don't you ask him a specific question about what he knows now?
Do you know about his career at the Tampa Police Department?
I know he retired as a captain.
Okay. But you're not telling this court that he never lost his temper nor...
I wouldn't have any idea how.
Okay, fair enough. You indicated that he is currently not a danger to the community?
I believe that.
Okay. And you would agree with me that back on January 13th of 2014, your position would have been he wasn't a danger to the community then, correct?
Correct.
And you would agree with me that on January 13th of 2014, you were not at the Cobb Theater?
I was not.
You don't know the facts and circumstances of what transpired in that
No,
theater,
I don't.
correct?
That's correct.
Feel free to stand up and stretch, ladies and gentlemen. I know how painful those benches are. We just got done with lunch, so if you want to stretch, now's a good time. Good afternoon, Ms. Shaw. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Come on over there and have a seat, please. Mr. Michaels, you may inquire.
Thank you, Judge. Please state your full name,
Jennifer Lee Shaw,
and what is your maiden name?
Reeves.
And how are you related to Curtis Reeves, if you are?
I am related. He is my father.
And how old are you?
40.
Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I do. I have one brother, Matthew, who is 3 years younger than me.
And before I ask you a little bit about Matthew, let me ask you what you do for a living.
I am the Vice President of Human Resources for a community bank.
And do you have any children?
I do. I have one daughter, Madison. She just turned 2 on Sunday.
Okay. And then you told us that you have a brother named Matthew, right?
Yes, sir.
And what does Matthew do for a living?
Matthew is a police officer with the Tampa Police Department.
And what's your mother's name?
Vivian Reeves.
How old is she?
My mom is 67.
And is your mother and your father still married?
Yes, they are. They've been married for 46 years.
Now, you have other relatives in the area?
Yes, sir, I do. My grandmother, who is my father's mother, lives in Tampa. She just turned 93 on Sunday. His brother lives in Oklahoma, but all 3 of his sisters live in this area. One sister lives in Hudson, one lives in the Sanford, Orlando area, and her son also lives in the Sanford, Orlando area, and then my Aunt Margaret lives in Tampa. I have my aunt and uncle who live in, I think their address is Land O'Lakes. My 2 cousins, Holly and Tommy, are their children, and their children also live here as well. Holly has 2 children, Laura and Tyler, and both of them and their spouses live in the Land O'Lakes, Lutz area. And my cousin Tom has 3 daughters who still live at home.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Did I cut you off? Or are there more?
No, sir. I think that's all I can think of right now.
Okay. And is your family, would you describe it as a close-knit family? In other words, do you see these family members that you described?
Yes, sir. All of them.
Okay. And do you have family get-togethers?
Yes, sir. We have family get-togethers throughout the year. Obviously, the holidays are the obvious times of the year we get together with all of them. And actually, the family members that I talked about are 2 sides of the family. Some of those are my mom's side, and some of those are my dad's. But we actually, just because we are a close family, we all get together lots of times, both sides of the family. Birthdays, holidays, We're getting ready to have a joint birthday with my daughter Madison and all her cousins and both sides of the family next weekend.
Okay, and how old is Madison?
Madison is 2.
Now, you live where, in what town right now?
I live in Brooksville.
And who do you live with?
I live with my mother and father.
Okay, and there's some circumstances, and we'll talk a little bit about how you got to live there, but have you lived in the, for lack of a better terminology, the Tampa Bay area your entire life?
Yes, sir.
And what about your brother? Where does he live?
He lives in, his address is Dade City.
Okay, and has he also lived in this area his entire life?
Yes, sir, except for when he was in the military for 6 years and kind of traveled around with them. So for that 6-year period, he did not live here in this area, but prior to that and after that, yes, sir, he has.
Okay. Now, the house you live in Brooksville, whose house is that?
That is my parents' home, Curtis and Vivian Reeves.
And how long have they lived there?
They've lived there since, I think, about 2005.
Okay, and did they build that house?
Yes, sir, they did.
And did they build that house as part of their retirement plan?
I believe so. Prior to that, they had lived in the same house since before I was born in Lutz. And then my brother had moved to Dade City. I had gotten married and moved to the Spring Hill area, so we were both north. And I think, yes, as part of their retirement, they just decided to kind of move closer to their kids. And still build a newer home that didn't have all the issues that a 30 or 35-year-old home had.
Okay, and that new home they built a little tiny home for 2 retired people to live in?
No, sir, they didn't. I think their house is about 2,500 square feet on about an acre of land. They built that house for, I know, in hopes of grandkids, which finally came along. And they also built it to be able to entertain and have family over, friends over.
Now, you said you grew up in Lutz?
Yes, sir.
And tell me about that upbringing. Well, before we talk about that, let's talk a little bit about your father's history, okay?
Okay.
Do you know where he was born?
He was born in Jacksonville.
And when did he move to Tampa?
I believe that he was still either an infant or a toddler when his family, his mother and father, relocated to Tampa. My grandfather was a truck driver.
And so he spent his entire life in the Tampa area, is that
Yes,
correct?
sir.
He was in the service, is that right?
Yes, sir. He was in the Navy for several years, and then in the reserves after that.
And do you know what he did in the Navy?
I don't know the technical title for it, but I know that he was on submarines.
And then once he got back to Tampa, do you know what sort of job or what sort of work he got?
I think he worked a couple of odd jobs, maybe a salesman at one point in time, and then he went to work for the Tampa Electric Company and was a lineman for them.
And how long did he do that for?
I'm not really certain. I don't think it was for very long because he went on with the police department, I think, in '66.
Okay. So when you were born, he was already, these are bad math skills, but when you were born, he was already with the Tampa Police Department.
Yes, sir.
And so you remember him growing up always as a police officer, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, you know your father went to college while he was in the police department, right?
Yes, he did.
Okay. And do you know where he went?
He went to the, I'm not sure if he went anywhere for undergraduate, but I know he ultimately graduated magna cum laude from University of Tampa, and that was in 1976.
Okay. And he did that while he was a police officer?
Sure. While he was a police officer, he had a toddler and one on the way.
And was your mother working at the time?
I believe that she was. I'm not completely certain of that.
But throughout her life, she has worked?
Yes, sir.
What sort of work did she do?
For the majority that I can remember of our childhood, my mother was a secretary at a construction company. She also went back to school after Dad did and got her teaching degree, and then she taught elementary school for several years. And then she decided that wasn't the career for her, so she, I think she went directly from there to USAA Insurance.
Okay. Now, your father rose through the ranks in the police department. You remember that as a child, right?
Yes, sir.
And he graduated magna cum laude from college.
Yes, sir.
So was this a father that you never saw around the house?
No, sir.
Okay, tell me about your childhood then in terms of your father being present.
My father was present at everything. I don't know. My parents seemed to realize that investing time in your family was the most important thing. Either they realized that or they didn't have the money to not realize that. Because what we did as a family is we camped every year. We bicycled, we hiked, we fished. We did all kinds of mainly outdoor activities that we like to do. But my dad was always present at every activity. We went to church together every Sunday. Some Sunday nights, some Wednesday nights. But no, I can't remember a time where my dad wasn't present for an event my brother or I had, or involved in our school activities or anything like that.
So when you were a child, you attended church regularly?
Yes, sir, we did.
And your father and mother were also involved in that, right?
Yes, sir.
And what church was that you attended?
That was First Baptist Church of Lutz. My parents had gone there when they originally moved to Lutz, which was prior to me being born, and they were active in church in that. Prior to them having me in '73, my dad was active with the youth group at church, planning like their social activities, volleyball, basketball, all of those kinds of things. And then that's the only church that I can remember going to up until adulthood. So.
Okay. Now, I mean, like all children, sometimes children do something that doesn't necessarily please their parents. So, is it fair to say that you were, punished or disciplined as a child?
Yes, it is.
And let me ask you, were you also spanked?
Yes, I was.
Were you ever spanked in anger?
No.
By your father?
No, it was quite the opposite, which seemed like more of a punishment than anything else, because I don't know if it was a cooling off period for him or for us, but when we did get in trouble, it was go think about what you did, and then if you were going to get spanked or grounded or what have you, we had to discuss it before and admit what we did, and I don't know was not an acceptable answer.
Okay, let me ask you this. I learned how to cuss by driving around with my dad. When you drove around as a child in the car, did you hear your father react in an angry way to people that may have cut him off or any of those sort of things?
No, sir, not that I can remember. We actually, I think I might have been, we traveled back and forth to North Carolina, and I remember one time he had a Ford Explorer, and he had like a rack on the back of it that he put action packer boxes on, and that's what we used to take, since we always had the truck loaded down, we took stuff back and forth from Florida, and I remember somebody rear-ended us somewhere in North Carolina, and it bent that rack on the back. I don't think there was anything on it, but I remember them resolving it amicably. They didn't even call the police. They didn't get insurance involved, and there was kind of a non-incident. Dad told the guy, I think I can bend it back.
Okay. So obviously this was something that your father cared about in terms of that rack on the back of the truck, but your testimony is that he didn't react angrily to the person that wrongfully crashed into the back of him, right?
Correct.
Can you think of any time during your childhood where you saw your father interact in an angry manner with a neighbor, somebody at the store, somebody else in the car at all?
No, sir, I can't.
Now, you live with your parents now, right?
Yes, sir.
And how long have you lived there?
I've lived there since the end of April 2013, so the end of April last year.
Okay, and you're married?
I am currently married, but I'm in the process of going through a divorce. My husband and I are separated, and that's why I moved in with my parents.
All right. And you have your daughter, is it Madison?
Yes, sir.
Part of the time you share with the child's father, correct?
That is correct.
And so the child and you are living there with your father and mother, right?
Yes, sir.
In Brooksville?
Yes, sir.
Now, when you told your father that your husband was seeking a divorce, what was his reaction? What was his demeanor, his temperament?
When my husband told me that he didn't want to be married to me anymore, the first person I called was my dad. I kind of expected him to try to take charge of the situation and kind of help me through it that way. But he didn't. He said, "We love you. Do you want me to come over?" He asked me if there was anything that him and Mom could do for me. And he told me to remember to slow down in your decision-making process and make sure that you consider yourself and Madison and that you make smart decisions.
And throughout your childhood and your life and up to now, has your father been a man that has always honored his commitments?
Yes, sir. He was big on us being responsible and following through on your obligations.
Now, let's talk a little bit. You mentioned North Carolina. Your parents don't own that home or property anymore, is that correct?
No, sir. They sold it several years back.
And so the only home they own right now, is that the Brooksville
Yes, sir.
home where you live?
Yes, sir.
Because the Lutz home was sold previously as well.
That's correct.
You mentioned you have a grandmother who's, you said 93?
Yes, sir.
She just had a birthday, right?
On Sunday.
And so that is your father's mother.
Yes, sir.
And is she in assisted living, or is she living in her own place still?
She lives in a retirement community where it's a trailer park, but it's a retirement community, and she does live alone.
Okay. And what does your father do to look after her or care for her?
Because she insists on living alone, my mom and dad go there several times a week. They take food, do odds and ends around the house for her. I know Dad trims her shrubbery. Mom helps out in the house. They may cook her dinner. They always bring her food and that kind of stuff, but usually they go a couple of times a week.
Okay. Now, growing up, you remember your father, was he a physically fit kind of a guy?
Yes, sir, he was.
Okay, and why do you say that?
I know that the police department required him to be in shape. The tactical response team required him to be in shape. He was never the weightlifter, big muscle dude, but he was always physically fit. He ran all the time to kind of keep his weight down and to stay in shape, and the cardio piece. So.
Okay. Now, before we talk about some of your observations of maybe what he's like now and some of his physical limitations and maladies, let's talk about your mother a little bit. You said your mother is 67?
Yes, sir.
And she has some medical issues, does she not?
Yes, sir, she does.
Okay, and what are those?
My mom has osteoarthritis. I believe that she also has some bone loss as far as bone density is concerned. She also has a nodule in one of her lungs. She goes to Moffitt Cancer Center every 6 months and has that looked at. The last time she went, not only did they still see the nodule, but they found another spot in her lung. She just went again last week, and the original nodule has not grown at all, and the other one has gone away. So that's a huge answer to prayer. Mom also has asthma and chronic bronchitis, and through going through all kinds of testing on her lungs, she only has about 60% lung capacity.
Now, does your father do anything to help your mother deal with these problems that she's having now, these physical ailments?
Yes, sir. The doctors have told my mom that there is a possibility that she may have to have surgery in the future, and that she needs to stay physically fit. She needs to walk. She needs to stay healthy, and that she needs to do all of those things in anticipation of, if they have to do surgery, that she recovers quicker.
And your father likes to bicycle, right?
Yes, sir.
And did he buy a special non-fast road bicycle so that he could ride around with your mom?
Yes, he did.
Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about your father's physical ailments. What do you know in terms of the physical maladies that your father suffers?
My dad kind of had the belief, I remember him talking over the years about how some of the people that retired from the police department, or people that retired, they just kind of got stagnant and didn't stay active. So Dad was determined that he was going to slow down the aging process, I guess, by staying active. But he has bursitis in his shoulder. I know he has arthritis in his hands. He struggled with his sciatic nerve for the better part of my childhood. I don't know if that's something that still bothers him now. I do know he has a bad back. He also has floaters in his eyes. So I guess the doctor has prescribed special drops to keep his eyes moisturized and that kind of thing.
So you know that in the past he's had problems with vision where he would actually have what you describe as floaters, which are objects appearing to move along the eye, correct?
That's correct.
All right.
I think it kind of obstructs the vision when it moves in a certain area.
Okay. And what else?
He has high blood pressure that he takes medication for. He has high cholesterol that he takes medication for. I think that his doctor, he's gone to the same doctor for as long as I can remember, and his doctor has prescribed him to take an aspirin every day just for his heart. I think Dr. Yetzi has even told him that he feels that it's a combination of the medication as well as the physical activity that Dad tries to be involved in that really helps him to regulate a lot of what he's having to deal with.
Does he also have a sleep-related illness?
Yes, sir, he does. He's gone to the sleep clinic where you stay overnight and they have you all hooked up to the monitors and everything, and they've determined that when he sleeps at night, the oxygen in his blood is very low, so he does use a CPAP machine to sleep with.
Okay. Now, let's talk about some of the things that you've observed, because you've been living at the house for a little while, about your dad on a day-to-day basis, okay? First of all, before I get there, let's talk about your daughter. Is that the only grandchild?
Yes, sir, it is.
And when your daughter was born, your parents were already retired, right?
Yes, sir.
Had been retired for a while.
Yes.
And so is it fair to say that their plans in retirement was sort of to travel? In fact, they have traveled a little bit.
They have traveled a little bit. Their plans were to travel, and when Madison was born, they actually had planned to go out west. But I had struggled with fertility issues, so the timing of that just didn't coincide with their trip.
So once your child was born, did they just go off on the trip? Tell me what happened.
No, sir. When Madison was born, I never thought that I would be able to have kids. And so my brothers never married, and so I guess they thought they were never going to be able to have grandchildren. And it was quite the blessing when my daughter was born and she was healthy. And it was a very emotional time for my whole family, for my mom, my dad, and of course myself and my husband. I enjoy working. I always knew that I would go back to work. I already had a daycare center picked out prior to Madison being born. And my parents were planning a trip out west, but my dad came to my mom. And it's not even something that we had discussed. And he said, I think that when Jennifer goes back to work, I want to keep the baby for a while. So I was able to stay home from work for 3 months with Madison, and then my parents kept her for 6 months after that before she went into daycare.
Okay. Because they wanted to see the baby grow, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Now, when we're talking about Madison, we're talking about your baby, does your father play with Madison?
Yes, sir, he does.
And tell the court what kind of observations you made about any kind of physical problems your father had while he was playing with Madison.
Well, I mean, as far as picking her up, so you can sometimes tell if I think at Monday's appointment she weighed like 26.5 pounds, but as far as picking her up and things like that, sometimes Dad, you can see him favor one or the other shoulder when he picks her up. He will push her in her swing in the backyard. She likes for people to get on the floor and play with her, and she'll always say, sit, Papa, or sit, Grandma, or, to sit on the floor with her. And he's just really not able to do that. When he does get down there, it's not easy getting up. Occasionally, we'll walk around the neighborhood together, all four of us, because one of the activities that he involves Mom in is getting her to walk around the neighborhood all the time. And we'll walk around the neighborhood, and I have a dog, and we'll take my dog, and we'll take Madison in her wagon, too. And so sometimes Dad and I take turns pulling Madison around. around the neighborhood.
Okay, now, your father likes to woodwork, or he did in the past, correct?
Yes, sir.
Does he still do a lot of that?
No, sir, he didn't. He doesn't do very little. I think he made something really simple recently, like a ladder ball stand. It was just something he bolted together and stained. But as far as the woodworking he used to make tables and benches and just all kinds of things. He kept all of his tools because he just knew that his hands would get better and he'd be able to do it again. But it hasn't happened.
Okay. Now, you know that he likes to hunt with your brother, and they had a hunt they were going to use some bow and arrows to go hunting. Is that right?
Yes, sir. They had an archery hunt, and it was 3 weeks ago.
Tell me what you know about your father's ability to actually use the bow.
I didn't really know this at the time because I work, but I knew that Dad has some targets set up in the backyard, and he practices his archery was practicing every day. He would go out and he would shoot a couple of arrows and then come back in, and then he may go out several times a day to just to shoot a couple of arrows and then come back in the house. What I didn't know at the time is that he was having trouble pulling his bow back, but him and my brother had planned this trip way in advance. We knew he was looking forward to spending the week with Matt. He was looking forward to being out in the woods. He wasn't sure he would be able to pull the bow back, and it's my understanding after he came back from his trip, my mom told me while he was gone that he got to the point where he couldn't pull it back at all, so that he went and got a massage to try to kind of loosen up his shoulder and see if he could do that. And then when he was on the hunt, he said he backed the pressure down on his bow in hopes of being able to hunt, but he wasn't even sure that he'd be able to pull it back, even if something came into range.
Have you seen him have difficulties putting together a kayak paddle, for instance, lately?
Yes, sir. We go. That's one of the family activities that we do is between them and my brother, they have 4 kayaks, and the 4 of us will go kayaking. And there's been several occasions where my dad has asked me to help him pull the paddles apart when we're done,
Okay.
just because he doesn't have the strength in his hands.
Now, we know that your father and mother own a home in Brooksville, right?
Yes, sir.
Do they own property anywhere else
No, sir.
in the United States
No, sir.
or anywhere else in the world?
No, sir.
And let's just talk a little bit about a financial issue. If the court were to grant some kind of pretrial release, have you identified some funds that would be used to pay for bail or to try to contact a bondsman for a premium?
Yes, sir, we have.
And so what have you identified?
My parents own their home free and clear, but
And how much is that worth by the property appraiser's website?
The tax records from last year indicated it was worth about $186,000.
Okay. And what else? Do they have any cash available?
They have a $30,000 home equity line of credit on that house. It doesn't have a balance on it though, and then they have between their checking, savings, between their savings account, they have $22,000.
Okay, and so that would be the money that would be earmarked to, if the court were to grant pretrial release, to try to secure a bond for your father.
Yes, sir.
Now, you've known your father from the beginning, and you live with him now again, both as a child and as an adult. Have you seen any changes in his temperament?
No, sir.
Is there anything that you have noticed that you could tell the court would be an indication that he no longer wants to honor his commitments as he always has?
No, sir.
In your opinion, is there anything that your father has done or said either 40 years ago or today that would make him a danger to this community or any community?
No, sir, not at all.
If the court were to grant your father a pretrial release, is there any doubt in your mind that your father would show up for court each and every time that the court required him to be here?
No doubt at all.
Can I have one moment, Judge?
Of course.
Mr. Escobar reminded me there were two issues that I didn't discuss with you regarding the home. The home you live in now belongs to your mother and father.
Correct.
And so your father had guns in the home at one point.
Yes, sir.
And so now, what is that situation? Are there any guns in the home?
No, sir, there are not. We actually removed any guns that were in the home as well as the ammunition the day after the incident.
Okay. And you also had your own personal firearm.
Yes, sir, I did.
That's no longer in the home.
No, sir, it's not.
Your father, he has a passport, right?
Yes, sir, he does.
And you have that with you today, prepared if the court were to ask for it, to turn in his passport,
Yes,
correct?
I do.
One other thing, let me ask you, as you look out in the audience, do you recognize any of these people?
A lot of them.
Okay. How many people do you think are here on your father's behalf this morning, or this afternoon, I should say?
I don't know number-wise, but pretty much split it down the middle, and the whole side is here for my dad.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have anything.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Ma'am, do you have the passport on you right now?
Yes, sir, I do.
You do? Okay. You may inquire, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court? Mr. Escobar, Mr. Marcus. Mrs. Shaw, good afternoon, ma'am.
Hi.
Have you ever been to the movies with your father?
Yes, I have.
And have you known your father to carry a firearm on his person?
Yes.
And have you been to the Cobb Theater with your father?
That's the one in the Wesley Chapel?
Yes, ma'am.
I believe that we have.
Okay. And did your father carry a firearm in that movie theater on the occasion that you and he went to the movies?
I'm not certain.
Is it fair to say that he carries that .380 Kel-Tec on him at all times when he's out and about?
I don't think so, because I think he has a .22 that he carried quite a bit as well. And it's not it's something that we kind of grew up with. It's not something that we ever talked about. Are you carrying today? Are you not carrying today? He had a concealed weapons license, and I kind of assumed that he pretty much always had a firearm on him.
Okay, so it's fair to say that your assumption of him was that he always carried a firearm, be it the .380 Kel-Tec or a .22 revolver.
I wouldn't know the type of gun, but I would say yes to the first part of that question.
And in fact, since you've indicated that you've been to the Cobb Theater, are you aware of the fact there's a sign before you go into the theater that indicates no firearms or knives?
I am now that this incident has happened. I don't know that I ever paid attention to it prior.
Judge, may I have this mark for identification? Sure.
It's part of the policy.
Mr. Escobar, I'm going to ask if I want to see his passport. Do you mind if I look at it now while
I have no problems with that.
State, do you have any objection to looking at the passport?
No, sir.
It's the actual pass part, and then there's a card in there as well.
See a couple.
Okay.
I'd ask the record reflected I'm showing it's been marked as States Exhibits F and G to Mr. Escobar and Mr. Marcus. May I approach the witness, Judge?
You may.
So I'm handing you what's been marked as States Exhibits F and G for identification purposes. I'm going to ask that you take a look at these photographs and see if, when you went to the Cobb Theater, that you recall seeing that sign there.
Not that I've ever thought of it. I don't recall ever seeing that.
Thank you, Mayor. You do indicate, Judge, that your father always carried a firearm on his person, though, correct?
I can't say every single time that he's always done that, but I kind of assumed growing up that he pretty much did.
Okay. Now, are you pretty knowledgeable about the assets that your father has, and if he's on any deeds, so on and so forth?
I think that he might be on my grandmother's trailer.
Right.
I believe that he might be on her trailer, but I think that that's the only thing.
Do you know the value of that trailer or that property?
I wouldn't say it has much of a value. I couldn't even guesstimate.
Were you aware of your father having some liquid assets, cash, and that the money was placed in Linda's name? Who is Linda? How is Linda related to your father?
He has a sister named Linda.
Okay. Are you aware of any transactions going on back and forth since this occurred, that money was transferred to Linda's name?
I don't think money, well, my father never, that was never my father's money. That was my grandmother's money, and I believe it came from my grandfather's life insurance. My dad being the oldest child, I think my grandmother had the money in both her and dad's name. So I think that they might be in the process of retitling that.
How much money are we talking about?
I'm not really sure. I think it was in CDs, but I don't know the amount because it's not his asset.
You indicated that all of the firearms have been removed from the residence?
Yes, sir.
Where are the firearms at now?
My brother was the one that actually removed them from the house, and he has them locked up.
So you would agree with me that nothing would prevent your father from getting his hands on those firearms if he wanted to?
No, sir, he wouldn't. He would not get.
Are you agreeing with me? There's nothing to prevent your father from telling his son, I want my firearms back? Should he be granted a bail or release?
No, he would not get his hands on the firearms for his own integrity and for my brother's integrity.
Okay. Where are the firearms that you indicated that your brother had them? Where?
My brother removed them from the house, and he has. I know that he has locked them in someone's safe. I'm not certain if they're together, because I know that he removed firearms and he removed ammunition, and I don't know. I mean, I'm not quite certain the answer to that question.
Okay. Do you know if it was rifles? Was it handguns, revolvers, pistols?
I think there was both.
Okay. You have a moment, Judge?
You may.
Does that have any further questions of Mr. Shaw?
I'm going to return the passport to Mrs. Shaw.
Thank you.
Do you have any further questions, Ms. Miles? Ms. Shaw, before you're excused as a witness, I looked at the passport. It appears it was issued in 2010. Is that correct?
Can I look at it?
That's okay. You don't
I don't know offhand.
It doesn't look like it's ever been used to travel out of the country. Do you know if it has been?
I think they've used it for going on cruises.
Cruises?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I don't think that they've ever traveled. I don't think that they've ever traveled to another country, but I think they used it for cruising.
Bahamas and stuff?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for being here today. We've now done our hour and 10 minutes since the lunch break, so it'd be an appropriate time for us to take a recess. Would you be having any witnesses remaining, or is this the last witness you're going to be calling this afternoon?
No, I believe it's going to be your last one.
That was your last witness, all right. So, State, while we're taking our 10-minute break, would you like me to extend it to 15 minutes so that you can arrange all of your witnesses and be ready to go promptly at 3 o'clock? Plus the additional few minutes to look at the video and anything else you need to coordinate with Mr. Escobar?
Defense done with the presentation of witnesses?
They indicated that they are.
They are, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we would need some time.
Want to call it 3 o'clock then? Or you want?
That's fine.
Okay.
That's
Is
fine.
3 o'clock realistic, or do you want me to do 3 or 5?
No.
If you say 3, I'll be back at 3. Okay. 3 o'clock then, we're in recess.
All right.
Always say all right. You want to go that way?